For USCFootball.com, I'm Jack Smith, alongside Connor Morrissette for instant analysis from USC's Tuesday practice of Oregon week. Connor, we got to talk today for the first time to USC's interim co-defensive coordinators, Shaun and Brian Odom. What did you gain from conversations with those two?
Well, they have a very difficult task of how much can you fix in a week, because last week's game against Washington, both coaches admitted it wasn't good enough, and it was a game where some of the players said they didn't watch film and they just flushed it and moved on. And I think sometimes in football, when you don't play very well, that's what happens. So that's a balance. I wonder too if, and Jack, you talked about this, if you can kind of say last week there was a different guy in charge, now we're in charge and it's a clean slate. So they're just kind of balancing how to overcome a really tough look last week, giving up all those rushing yards to Washington. Coach Nua said we didn't make enough plays. He said in practice they're working on not really changing too much, but they just want more energy, more fight. And Brian Odom said a lot of the same things. So we still don't know who's going to call the plays. I imagine it will be Brian Odom from the booth, because when Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch moved on to USC, Odom called the plays in the Alamo Bowl. Nua is going to stay on the field. Nothing's confirmed on that. That's just my feeling. We'll see what happens there, but it's a tough task, and they said they're going to split the duties 50-50 and just hope for the best.
Yeah, Odom said he didn't know what day it was exactly because they've been working so hard. They obviously found out, after the game, and they echoed what Lincoln Riley said yesterday. It's sad. You spend a lot of time in staff meetings, working on game plans, that you become really close to the people that you work on the same staff with. So obviously it was sad for them to see Grinch fire, but they agreed. They weren't playing the way that they needed to. The word that Nua used the most was a spark. That's how he and Odom are viewing their jobs across these next 2 weeks before the end of the regular season, saying they need to find a way to get this team a spark, whether that's in practice or during the games. And obviously, the big question is, what are you changing? We asked that to both Nua and Odom, and what'd you gain from what they said?
It's going to be fascinating to see who plays. They didn't come out and say, obviously, these guys are going to play, these guys aren't going to play, but Alex Grinch, of course, signed off on everyone getting the minutes that they did, the snaps they did, into the rotations that they were in. And talking to some parents, it sounded like we could see something different, because Grinch did have the final say now that he's no longer here, especially at the linebacker spots. Could we see some more consistent rotations with Odom taking over? Because it's sort of been a little bit of a mystery, Jack. So that's something that I'm thinking about right now. But in terms of changes, it was just more fight, more energy, more passion. That's what the guys wanted to see at practice. They haven't really gotten into what we can expect to see different on the field Saturday against Oregon. It sounds like they're going all out on the game plan, like you said, Jack. With Coach Odom not knowing what day it was today, just grinding so hard. Lincoln Riley said similar things last week on Thursday. He said we hadn't left the facility, and that, of course, didn't really lead to good results against Washington. So something needs to change, of course. They're just providing a spark, like you said, and just working really hard to ensure fight and ensure more passion from the group. And I think this late in the year, that's really all they can do.
Well, the band surely has passion. We had to find basically the only spot on campus now after daylight saving times that has any light, so we're closer to the band. They're still playing loudly. But yes, they were kind of asked too about schematic changes. Shaun said the $1 million question is figuring out, with 2 weeks left, what can you schematically change within a week after a firing? I asked Brian Odom, I was like, hey, Shaun said this is the $1 million question, so what's your answer? And he said it's really hard because you don't want to change too much. Of course, these players have been studying the same defense, some of them for 2 years, some of them joined in the offseason, have been doing it for this entire year, obviously 10 weeks of football and the bye week. So if you're changing a lot, you're going to get them out of what they're comfortable with. So Brian Odom said he would be doing a disservice to the players, and it would just make the fans disappointed if they changed everything and the players had to learn on the fly. You have to let the players do what they know, I believe was the line that he used. Obviously they want to change things, but if you change too much, you're just going to confuse the players. You can't install a new defense in 1 week. So the $1 million question, which we'll kind of see more of an answer to on Saturday after getting a little bit today, is how much can they change schematically? Because we know that they need to, but it's kind of hard at this point in the season to make a full defensive scheme change. Maybe you'll see some simplification. We didn't get any hints of that today, but that's something that fans have talked about, some simplification of the scheme, some simplification of the play calling, but you can't change an entire scheme in 1 week, especially going up against a good offense like Oregon.
And especially playing on the road at night in Autzen Stadium. If you change too much, there's already some confusion with calls. I mean, we see Christian Roland Wallace shaking his hands, and there are a lot of questions about the play calls last week against Washington that occurred. So I don't think you can choose to change too much and confuse guys even more in probably the most hostile road environment that the team will face all year. I don't envy Coach Nua and Coach Odom this week being in this role. I think it's a good opportunity for him, but going up to Oregon and playing that game in that really loud stadium, it's a really, really tough task. Maybe there will be a spark from USC. we'll just have to see, because for like the spark that occurs, I just feel like that gets evened out by how hard it is to play in Oregon. So we'll see what happens. I think the general kind of feeling I have walking away from it is, of course, they weren't going to share too much today, and what happens on the field is going to tell us a whole lot more than we can relay right now.
And Brian Odom said that Oregon obviously provides a lot of challenges for a defense. You've got Bo Nix at quarterback. Bryson Shaun told me that it's very hard to going against those experienced quarterbacks, because they had to do that last week against Michael Penix, who he told me they saw at Indiana when he was in Indiana, and then had to play him at Washington. They've got really good running backs with Bucky Irving, good receivers, and then Brian Odom said he thinks it's the most physical offensive line that they have played, which is something USC struggled with last week against a Washington offensive line that didn't really have that reputation, and yet they still rushed for over 300 yards against USC. So there's a lot of things that they need to clean up. We also got to talk to some players today, a couple of linebacker captains, as well as Bryson Shaw and Max Williams, two safeties. What did you gain from talking to the players and their reaction to Alex Grinch being fired?
As always, Mason Cobb took things really well, putting everything into perspective. He said, I lost my defensive coordinator who was fired after my sophomore year at Oklahoma State. I've been through this before. It's like losing a brother, but you got to move on. He said most people would kill to be in our position right now, playing at USC with a big opportunity in front of them. If USC does win out, they have a chance to make that Pac-12 championship game. So the morale with Cobb was really good, and he was bummed, of course, about his coach getting fired, the guy who had a big role in bringing him here to USC. It just seemed to me like he's such an experienced and smart guy that he's a great leader to bring USC through this troubling period, and I just thought his mindset was awesome. Like, we have no other choice but to keep fighting. That's what we're going to do. People would kill to be in our position, like I said, and he kind of has a really good understanding of where everything is. And to USC's credit, it's a team that hasn't quit. It keeps fighting every week. We've talked about it on instant analysis, a bunch. I expect the team to fight in Oregon. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a really tough place to play. I think Oregon's probably the best team USC has played this year, so the timing of it all isn't really that great, but with Cobb leading the way, USC's going to go in there, work as hard as they can, and maybe with some new defensive coaches, something's going to change. That's, if you're a fan, I think you just have to hold on to hope with that.
Yeah, Jamal Muhammad said he feels like the energy has been higher in practice the last couple days. Nothing has changed when it comes to practice structure. I asked him that after he said the energy was higher, so clearly they're not changing a whole ton, and they haven't said a whole ton, but we did get to talk to a handful of those guys today. Bryson Shaw also echoed, they've had good energy, the team has responded well, and basically every question I asked him, he's like, well, we're just trying to flush it, we're moving on, and we're going to go to Eugene. That seems like the team's message. It definitely feels like another week where they're influenced and they're all trying to have that same united message, and it kind of is, we're moving on. Obviously it's sad, obviously it sucks, as Mason Cobb said, to lose a brother and Alex Grinch, but they're moving on. They're going to go to Eugene. Did you have any other takeaways today before we wrap this up?
It's unfortunate for USC and the fans, just how much can you flush? Because after the Utah game, we heard from Kalen Bullock, and he said, I didn't watch film of that last drive where Utah got on field goal range, and today we're not watching film against Washington. I get it, you got to move on after some disappointing performances, but you'd hope that would only happen once. It seems like it's happened a couple times. Slate's clean, we'll see what happens. I just keep repeating myself, it's such a tough place to play this weekend. Anything can happen, but I'm sure they wish the Cal game was this weekend, and then you go to Oregon just to give them some time. But before that game, it's a really, really tough spot to go to with so much uncertainty on the defense right now.
Yeah, the last note I'll make is doesn't have to do with the defensive coordinator. Really, the only question that we've had to ask today about not having a defensive coordinator. But I asked Shaun Nua, what's maybe the explanation for why the pass rush hasn't been able to get to the quarterback as of late. Only two sacks across the last 4 games, and he just owned up. He said, "It's on me. I got to train them better at bringing the quarterback down." That was his entire answer. So he's taking the blame for why the pass rush has tailed off since the hot start to the season. But that's kind of all we got for you guys today. Only got to talk to 4 players, but a really nice chance to talk with Shaun Nua and Brian Odom. Both of those interviews are up here on YouTube. We've got videos of them at practice, and then the 4-player interviews up here as well. Make sure you guys are checking out uscfootball.com for the articles and everything that will be written, everything on the board, on the peristyle stuff that was put up last week. A really great interview with Zachariah and Zion Branch, who were in the studio for over an hour talking to Ryan and Shotgun. Tons of content up, so if you want to clear your mind of the defensive coordinator issues, go listen to those two talk. You won't be thinking about the defense for that hour, because it was a really entertaining conversation.
And we're going to hear from the offense tomorrow. The offense, the players and a coach, offense #1 in the country in points per game. So as much as the defense gets all the negative headlines, the offense gives USC a chance every week, and they'll go into Autzen Stadium and continue to fight just like the USC defense will. I think sometimes just hear people accuse me especially of being too negative talking about the defense. We'll talk about the offense tomorrow and maybe paint a little bit of a brighter picture.
Well, that's all we've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching here on YouTube. Hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well. You can follow either of us on Twitter, but for Connor Morrissette, I'm Jack Smith. Thank you guys for watching Instant Analysis, and we'll see you tomorrow.